Hello and welcome to the third All About Symbian video podcast on the N97. Everybody, Ewan Spence here again at www.allaboutsymbian.com with another of my video diaries looking at the N97, but in the real world. This isn't a review or a test of all the exact numbers and specifications and such like. This is what is it like to actually use out and about, when you need to rely on it as your communications tool, when you need to rely on it as your organiser, as your scheduler, and as always every year I'm using the latest bit of technology at the Edinburgh Fringe. Right now, next show I'm going to look back on all your questions, so you're welcome to leave your comments and ask any questions about the device, and we will take them up there. Later on in this diary I want to talk about the mail and the web access that I'm using for the phone. But first of all, a couple more opinions on the device, just as I've been using it. The first one is, I've been worrying about the sort of difference between finger and stylus control. I find out that I've been using this open a lot more than I've been using it closed, and the touch screen in landscape really does need that stylus. Switch it back though into the portrait mode, and it's actually much more finger optimized, which isn't surprising on two fronts, given that the 5800 has already developed that, and also I've used the 5800 extensively as well, so there's a certain bit of familiarity. But that's familiarity bred out over maybe like a 6-week review of the Nokia 5800, and only 3 or 4 days in the landscape mode. But I have to say, I actually like using it closed in the landscape mode. It just feels a little bit more comfortable. I do a lot of reading. There seems to be more information on screen, and it just feels nicer. Partly, I think that is because when you go into an application, the buttons at the side, the soft key buttons, are just very reminiscent of how it was laid out on the Nokia 5800s and right back into the early communicators from Nokia when they were using GEOS. So again, it's part of that familiarity. And one of the things about doing reviews like this, and the long-term reviews, is that you do need familiarity with the device to actually get used to the quirks and understand it. There are very few devices that you can just pick up and use straight out of the box, and those tend to be the ones that have very focused functionality. A big complicated smartphone doesn't. It's all over the shop. Other problems. Now, here's a big one. It's a big one that this one here, the mini USB port. Micro USB port. Not because it's micro USB port, and I now have to carry 2 cables around with me because I do have my E75 with me in case it gets wet or the battery runs out, although I haven't had a chance to fall back on it yet. But it's because whenever you type, let me just get the charger cable up. Whenever you have to type, you find that the charging cable just sits right where your hand wants to be, and I just don't like that. It just gets in the way. Wish it'd be at the top, the bottom, or on the side under the screen. Would have been a lot more useful, more ergonomic when you're using it while it's on the desk and it's charging. I also wish, given that I can stay in landscape mode, that I could just lock the whole thing into landscape mode. If you switch auto turning off, then whenever you close the device, it automatically goes into portrait. You need to have auto turning on to get to landscape while closed. I want it to stay like that all the time, Nokia, please. That would be nice. Finally, it's too bright. People have always been going on about the screen and the contrast and everything, and I'm doing a lot of my work either at night or in dark theatres with the lights on just a little bit so you can sit down, or in complete blackness when the stuff is on. And the screen, even with the sensor turned right down, is very bright. And the backlit keyboard, because it's in such a dark environment, actually is so bright it goes right through the white plastic, and it's kind of hard to see what keys are which. I can't believe this. The screen is too bright. Could you dull it down, please? Who would have thought that a couple of years ago? Right then. Out and about, there's a lot of organisation of Fringe stuff that runs by email, not Twitter, not text or anything. People sending emails, and those might be forms that you need to edit to request press tickets, or read through the press releases of acts that you're about to interview, or look up your timetables online, or search for shows and look at all the online reviews. And that means email and web are very strong components on that. Now, I'm using my Gmail account on here, and the built-in messaging application is, well, to put it frankly, it's okay. It knows what Gmail is, so you give it the Gmail address and all the settings get put in place. It's all set up. You just go name, password, bang, the whole thing gets set up. And I remember many years ago having to do all that manually, and it's a lot easier and a lot more user friendly, and congratulations to Nokia for doing that. But you only have IMAP access. You don't have threaded access. So if you've got a conversation going back and forward, it's 6 mails that will show up in your email box, rather than say look at Gmail in the web browser and it's just one, because it captures all of that threading. Also, HTML emails are not automatically shown. You get the body of the text, which is just all the formatting and everything. You do have a link through to the HTML and the page as an attachment, so you can still view it in the web browser, but it still feels a bit of a clunker around. There should be something that simply says, this is only an email message, I'll just show up HTML. It would, great, finally we can read it, but it still isn't user friendly enough in my opinion. What else? I love the fact that it's not quite push, but you can set it up to automatically download or give you alerts, and the little pop-up screen that sits on the home screen, which just shows you latest emails, very useful. And you can just take a quick glance at the phone and you can see what's come in, what's not come in, and if you need to deal with it. So that is a thumbs up. But because I'm using Gmail, it means I can use the Java application. Now, I looked at this briefly in the 5800 and it was rubbish, because it takes the top of the screen, makes a little square, and then puts a pretend keyboard underneath of your cursor pad, and it just really locked up very little screen space, and I ignored it. Putting it on the N97, while in that portrait mode, it's still really horrible and fiddly, and it's got extra pretend buttons on the screen. Switch it into landscape mode, and firstly it auto-rotates, so congratulations. It just works. It uses a full width. There's only 2 tiny buttons for your soft keys. You can still use all the keyboard controls, and you've got the full control. The Gmail Java application on the N97, when it's open or in landscape mode, is actually a really good implementation. And if there was a way to tie that into the front status panel on the N97's home screen, I would be delighted. Right, web browser as well. Now, the web browser has kinetic scrolling, which is when you flick and it keeps on moving and slowly slows down. The iPhone has it absolutely everywhere. Some N97 applications, and I'm looking at Gravity, the Twitter client here, have that implemented. The web browser has it implemented part of the way. It's implemented on the actual page of the web browser. Unfortunately, it's not implemented in the menus. So when you flick up on a web page, that's great. When you call up a menu, say all your bookmarks, and flip up, then screen actually moves down, because it's a different interface paradigm. So you're in the same application, looking up information online and looking up information offline. The cursors, the scrolling, working completely different directions. It's just wrong. Whoever's doing the UI up there should have realised that kinetic scrolling needs to be everywhere or nowhere. Simple as that. Don't confuse it. Don't have things changing on the same thing. And also, again, and this is a point that goes over the whole of the N97, on-screen dialogues, especially when you're in landscape mode, you kind of have the top 2 buttons left, and you have the block in the middle, and lots of spare, wasted screen. I mean, what is that? It just looks wrong. And I know they've had this since the E61, and the menus, when it goes into 320 by 240, just looked a little bit tacked on, to be honest. There's no style at all. There's nothing that makes you feel somebody spent time over it. It's just like they went, like the end. If you've ever read The Sheep Pig, it's like the end of The Sheep Pig. That'll do, babe. That'll do. So, still not impressed with that at all. And 5th edition was a good time to try and change that over, but they haven't. There's also tappy zoom. Now, the iPhone, I'm going to do the iPhone again, because this is what everybody will pretend to compare it to. It has a stretchy thing for zoom. Here you've got 2 zooms. You can tap on something and it will zoom in, and then it will zoom out, and then it will zoom in, and then it will zoom out. Which is nice, but it's just a straight 50% zoom, and it doesn't zoom into columns or anything. It doesn't do any reformatting. It's just zoom in, zoom out. Again, it's like, that'll do. It's great. There's more you could do, but you haven't. I don't know why not. And there's also the fact that it's quite clearly a mobile browser. You've only got the menu options hanging off the options. Because of the nature of the N97, I'm kind of expecting a proper menu key with a file and save as dialogues, and just copy off an image, bookmarks. When you look at the web browser, there's lots of menu options. The N97 just doesn't have that, and I miss that. And it's a testament to the fact that it is a smartphone and looks like a little computer, that I was expecting that, and it just wasn't there. But the most important thing is it does handle the stuff. It does handle the web pages. It allows me to do digital banking, for example, although I've only done that at home because I'm paranoid about using digital banking over the internet connection on a mobile phone as opposed to my home Wi-Fi, which at least is relatively secure. It handles the news pages, it brings up all the forums and dialogues. In short, it does what it's meant to do, and because this is a real world test, and because it does what it does, then it works. Yeah. Right then, so part 4, which will be coming at you on Tuesday, will have answers to all your questions back from www.allaboutsymbian.com, and at the same time I'm going to look at the PIM applications, calendar, contacts and such like as well. So I shall see you then. Ta-ra!